The sun had no mercy in the canyon that day, beating down like a judgment passed too long ago, its light pouring into the lie. Stone walls where shadows clung like frightened memories, and beneath one of those shadows lay the Apache girl, her leg trapped under a slab of fallen rock, blood drying dark against the dust while flies hovered with cruel patience. Yet her eyes were sharp, unbroken, fixed on the man standing above her with a revolver hanging heavy at his side, a man she had watched for hours before calling out, her voice steady despite the pain clawing through her bones, saying, "Make it quick, cowboy." "I won't scream." And the words struck him harder than any bullet ever had, because this was not how mercy was supposed to sound. He had come into the canyon tracking a lost horse, a simple job, one he'd taken to forget the war, the things he'd done, the orders he'd followed, the people who had looked at him with eyes just like hers, and now here he was again, standing over someone the world had decided was already dead. He knelt slowly, boots crunching on gravel, noticing how young she was, not a child, but not far from it either. Her black hair tangled with sand, her shoulder cut and swollen, her breath shallow but controlled, and still she met his gaze without fear, only resolve. She told him her name was Ashani, that the canyon had shifted during the night, that she had been gathering herbs for her mother when the rock came down, that she had screamed until her voice was gone and then learned screaming didn't move stone or men. He told her his name was Eli Cole, though he hadn't spoken it aloud in months, and when she laughed weakly at the sound of it, he realized how long it had been since anyone had laughed in his presence without bitterness. He checked the rock, tried to lift it, failed, cursed under his breath, and she watched him with a calm that unnerved him, telling him she knew the look on his face, that she had seen it before on soldiers, on hunters, on men who weighed a life like it was cargo. She said she did not want to die slowly, crushed and thirsty, listening to the canyon echo her own breathing until it stopped, and if he was the kind of man who carried a gun, then he could end it fast. But Eli didn't raise the revolver. Instead, he tore strips from his shirt, bound her wound, gave her the last of his water, ignoring her protests, telling her he'd seen worse odds turn, though even as he said it, he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. As the sun moved and shadows stretched, he built a small shade with his coat, spoke to her to keep her awake, asked about her people, her dreams, and she told him stories of rivers and songs and stars that guided hunters home, and with every word, the canyon felt less like a grave and more like a test. When night came cold and sudden, Eli made a choice that would cost him everything or save them both. He would climb out, ride through the dark to the nearest outpost, and return with tools and men before the canyon claimed her completely. She gripped his wrist before he left, fingers surprisingly strong, and told him if he didn't come back, she would forgive him because hope, she said, was heavier than stone, and as he climbed, bleeding hands scraping rock, her voice followed him upward, calm and unwavering. And if this story has pulled you into that canyon with them, if you feel the weight of that choice in the silence of that night, remember to subscribe, because stories like this only survive when they're carried forward by those who listen. Eli rode through the night like a man outrunning his own ghosts, the desert stretching endless and unforgiving under a sky thick with stars, every mile haunted by the fear that he would return too late, that the canyon would be quiet when he came back. And with each hoofbeat he remembered Ashani's voice, not pleading, not afraid, but certain, and it drove him harder than fear ever could. He reached the outpost by dawn, bloodied, half-mad with exhaustion, shouting until men came running. And though some hesitated at the mention of an Apache girl, something in Eli's eyes silenced their doubts, because they had seen that look before, the look of a man who would not live with himself if he failed. They returned with tools, ropes, and time slipping through their fingers, and when the canyon came into view again, Eli's heart stuttered at the sound of her singing, faint but steady, a song meant to guide spirits through darkness, and he knew she was still fighting. The rescue was brutal and slow, sweat and curses and straining muscle against indifferent stone, but when the rock finally shifted and her leg was freed, Ashani did not cry out, not even when pain tore through her like fire, and Eli caught her as she collapsed, realizing then that the promise she had made, "I won't," scream was not surrender, but strength. Days later, as she healed between worlds, guarded by both her people and the soldiers who now owed her their respect, Eli stayed, facing suspicion, threats, and his own shame. But Ashani spoke for him, told them he had chosen life when it would have been easier to choose death. And that choice mattered. Weeks passed. The canyon reclaimed its silence. But something new had been carved. Into both of them a truth deeper than scars. That mercy is not an act of ending pain, but of enduring it together. When Eli finally rode away, it was not as a cowboy chasing work, but as a man carrying a story that would outlive him, a story of stone and sun and a girl who refused to break. And if this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that courage often whispers instead of shouts, then subscribe to the channel. Because every subscription keeps these voices alive, keeps these stories traveling farther than any canyon ever could.